Welcome back to the off cycle and part 4 of the vintage Runabout Rebuild Restoration project. I've been getting rained out at some point in the day, pretty much every day for the last week, so I've not really made any progress fiberglass wise on the inside of the hull. My next step for inside of the hull was going to be start grinding down and removing all the excess stuff where the stringers were bedded in that I couldn't get cut out when I actually removed the stringers, as well as starting to take the transom out. But in order to do that, I have to take the motor off. So I decided just to go ahead and start working on the motor and get that all squared away while it was still on the hull. But I guess it was yesterday or the day before, I ran into a major snag, a major roadblock with the motor. I planned on replacing the tilt assist system with an actual electric tilt and trim, and it looks like that's going to be pretty much impossible to do, or the amount of work it's going to take to get that done is not worth putting into that motor. So the motor runs and works great as is, but it's not going to be a project. It's not going to be eligible for a power tilt and trim upgrade as far as the time and money I'd have to put into it to do that. Mostly the time and work is just not worth the effort to me. So we'll roll right into that and you'll get a better understanding of what I'm talking about and why it's not going to work. So I've run into a serious roadblock with this motor. This is the tilt assist motor. Uses the dumbass cable system, just horrifically cheap design. And I was going to replace this whole unit here with an actual tilt and trim, a hydraulic tilt and trim unit, power trim, which I know is compatible. But the problem I've run into, and I've been dealing with this for like 2 or 3 days now, is this pin that holds the ram up there is completely seized. So I've heated it, I've PB blasted it and let it soak for hours and hours, overnight. I have ended up drilling a hole on this side of the motor so that I could get something in there and pound on the pin. That didn't budge it. I had put a good sized bolt in here and a nut on the back side so that I could hold the nut in there and use my impact to drive the bolt in, and have used the bolt as kind of like a press to press the pin out. Did nothing. Ended up stripping the hardened, it was like an old crankcase or old head bolt or cylinder bolt, something that I had, and ended up stripping the nut out of that. I had ended up cutting that out of there to get it out. Now I'm trying to heat it up again and use this big cast iron C-clamp that I have, and then a socket on this side, and this thing is just flexing like crazy. I highly doubt this is going to work, so I really don't know what I'm going to do about getting this pin out. It's almost as if I'm going to have to end up somehow machining this. I really don't want to take this motor apart any further, but I may have to do that, or I may end up just having to try to drill this pin out and buy a new one. If I can get it drilled out thin enough, then it can collapse and flex as I try to drive it out, and maybe that will get some of the corrosion out. Other than maybe I thought about trying to, because this side over here is stainless, I cut the flange on this side, 2 flats on it, to try to put a big adjustable wrench on it to try to just twist it and break some of the corrosion loose. Wouldn't budge, not even a 1,000th of an inch. So this thing is completely seized in there, and this has been an absolute nightmare that I'm still working with. So I didn't have high hopes for this C-clamp, but you can see, if I get it, you can see how much twist is in this C-clamp because it's so tight. It's just twisting. So this is pretty much a waste of time. I'm about to just say, screw this thing. I'm about to start drilling it. So that clamp's done for. All right, I'm tired of messing with this thing, so we're just gonna get to drilling. It's got to come out. There's no way I'm gonna be able to deal with this motor if I don't have any power tilt and trim. And I have a line on a power tilt and trim system fairly cheap, or a motor with one fairly cheap. So that's the route I'm planning on going. So this has got to come out. and any more banging on it, I feel like I'm gonna end up breaking or cracking the actual mount or the motor, which I don't want to do. So I wish now that I hadn't cut these flats on here to try to twist it, but I did. But I've got my Dykem out and my caliper, so I'm gonna Dykem this and then use my calipers to try to draw an X on there center, and then center punch it, and then center drill it, and go from there. .08. Just call it 22. It's close enough. So set the caliber to half that, 11.4, and try to draw an X as best I can. And then where those two intersect should be my center point. Try to center punch as best I can. Take the glasses off. Alright. About as close as you'll get. I should have used probably a sharper center drill bit. It was pretty dull, and I think it walked up a little bit, so I think the hole's gonna be a little high. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this hole definitely walked north on me. It's kind of hard to tell because the flats they're not even, they're just hand cut flats, so one may be higher, one may be lower than the other. I'm thinking the top one is lower, it may be making that hole look more off center than it is, but I really have no good reference to measure from, but that'll have to do. So I absolutely hate dealing with having to drill or machine stainless steel. It's just such a gummy material. I hate drilling it. It always likes to catch drill bits and break them off. So that's my worst fear in doing this is I'm gonna start getting this thing drilled out, and I'm gonna break a drill bit off inside of there. So I'm gonna be using a lot of cutting fluid to keep this drill process lubricated. So I've stepped this hole up to 17/64 because what I'm going to try to do, just going to try this. I'm going to try to tap. This is a 5/16 18 tap. I'm going to try to tap that hole and see if I can get a slide hammer on this side of it and see if I can work it out with a slide hammer. I highly doubt that's going to work, but I'm going to give it a try. Like I mentioned before, I hate working with stainless. This is a good quality tap. This isn't like a Harbor Freight tap either. This is a good high-speed steel USA made tap, and using plenty of lube, plenty of cutting oil and tapping fluid. And this thing is just like, it's scared me. Even at 5/16, it's a pretty thick tap. You don't usually worry about breaking a 5/16 tap, but I mean, even after it's tapped, coming out, it's just sticky and gummy, and just, it could be a slow delicate process. All right, I got some decent threads in there now with the starter tap, but I'm gonna go ahead and run a bottoming tap in there too, just to clean them up, see if I can get them a little bit deeper. And I think before a slide hammer, I think I'm just gonna put a bolt in here with a nut, and then a socket over it, and tighten down the nut and kind of use it as a puller, and see if I can get that thing to pull that pin to pull this way. So this is what I've got set up now. This bolt and nut is going into the pin, and then as I tighten this nut, it should be pulling the bolt this way and just pulling on the pin. But the problem is, this is only a 5/16. This is just fairly cheap zinc plated hardware from Home Depot. I don't have a hardened 5/16. Well, all the stuff I have that's hardened is all metric from like old motorcycles and things like that. But my selection of metric taps is very limited. So I've got this pretty daggone tight, and it definitely is not not budging at all. So I really don't want to break that thing off in there. I may step up in size and see if I can drill a bigger hole and get a bigger bolt in there, and maybe match a metric bolt that I have with one of the few metric taps I have. That way I can have a hardened bolt in there. Okay, so I was able to find a 8mm 1.25 tap. So I tapped that in there and found a grade 8 bolt, like a hardened bolt, some better hardware to put on there. That's tightened up really tight, not budging, but there's a lot of tension on it. And I was able to find another really thick hardened bolt to go through the hole that I drilled. And what I ended up doing was taping the end of that bolt to the end of the pin just to keep it aligned, so I didn't have to try to hold the bolt and smack it with a hammer. So I was able to get up in the boat, since I'm right-handed, lean over the transom and really whack it hard with this big heavy hammer here. And that resulted in this heavy, thick bolt bending. So if that gives you any idea of how thick or how tough and how stuck that pin is, that's how stuck it is. So what we have now is a motor that's going to get the cowlings put back on it. I'll finish doing the water pump and the rebuilt carbs back on it, and it will be getting listed for sale. So we're gonna go with a different motor. I'm done messing with this thing. All right, thanks for watching. If you are in the Jacksonville, Florida area and you want a good deal on a 1990 Johnson 48 SPL motor with just the assist trim, the trim assist on it, no power trim, then I've got one for you. It's got a brand new water pump. It's got a brand new fuel pump. Both carbs have been completely rebuilt. It's got great compression. It really is a great motor. It would just need the trim assist cable so you could lift the motor up and down. It's just not something I want on my project. So aside from that, it's a great motor. It's going to have freshly painted cowlings and lower cowlings and hood as well. So if you're interested in that, just leave me a comment and we'll figure out how to get in touch. But stay tuned for part 5. Thanks.